Hi all, welcome to Python tutorials. This series of videos we will be basically dealing with Python OOPS concepts, and this is the first tutorial that and the following topics will be covered. What is a class? What are attributes and methods? What is an instance of a class? What is a constructor, or how do you initialize the class? How do you call methods within a class? How do you call methods with the class itself? So these are the following topics we will be covering in this part 1, and in the subsequent topics we will be covering inheritance, multiple inheritance, etc, etc. So let's focus on these topics on part 1. And I am Nadin Chakravarti, a Python certified trainer, and any questions you may have, please post your comments and subscribe to this channel so that it'll be helpful and we can help a lot of other students, right? Yeah, thank you. So let's get started. So you must be having this question, right? OOPS is implemented everywhere, right? Whether you take it as C++, Java, or Perl, Python, etc., right? So why are classes so important? So classes are important because they simplify your code. If classes were not available, you would have to write a lot of code to achieve your goal. So with classes, you can reuse functions in a much better way. You can reuse functions, variables, etc. in a much better way than if classes were not present. Remember, you can write the code without classes, but it is not in an effective way, and in the current corporate organizations, no one would allow you to write a program without classes. So classes is the fundamental topic and most important for any programmer. So let's get started. Let's take an example. Now, if you have an employee, if you have an organization, you will have thousands and 1 lakh millions of employees. Now the question arises, now each employee is joining the organization, then you would have to modify the code individually in case you do not have classes. So I'll show you all the differences and the advantages of classes with respect to an organization having thousands of employees, right? So let's get started and see how to define a class in Python. So I use the class keyword of Python and just type in the class name. Now if you look at this, I'm just trying to run this program by typing F5, and when I try to do this, what happens is you will see an error is being generated because we have not defined anything in a class, right? So just see this. There you go. You can see this error that is generated, right? So in order to bypass this message, you can just write a pass statement, which means ignore, you just let the class be defined without anything within it, right? Because I basically want to show you the differences, right? How a class looks with definitions within it and how it looks without the definitions within it, right? So now if I execute the program, it works well and good, right? So it's pretty good now. So let's go ahead and see what is an instance of a class. Now you've seen how to create a class. Let's see how you're going to create an instance of a class. Right? Now before creating the instance of a class, you need to understand what does a class contain. A class contains nothing but attributes and methods. Now you must be wondering, what are these attributes and methods, right? These are nothing. Attributes is nothing but similar to a variable, and method is nothing but similar to a function. We are just using the terms attributes and methods in classes because any variable that is tied to a class is called an attribute, and any function that is tied to a class is called a method. So actually functionally there is no difference, but these are just terms that we're using in the classes concept, right? Now comes the terminology. What is an instance of a class? An instance of a class, so you can create an instance of a class. So let's see how to create an instance of a class. So when I type this, emp_1 is an instance of a class. And this is how I would create the instance of a class. So when I do this, all the variables and functions that would reside in the employee class emp_1 instance would be able to access, and it would be unique. That means each instance of a class would have a unique location in memory, and it can operate on the functions and variables of the employee class independently. Right? Now I'll create another instance to show you exactly what I mean here. Right? Now when I do a print, you can see print. You can see now that emp_1 has its own unique memory location, and emp_2 also has its own unique memory location. Now when I try to execute this, you can see that the memory location of emp_1 is this, and the memory location of emp_2 would be this. So by this you could see that each instance of a class has its unique memory locations. Right. Now, as I said, each employee in an organization would have its own first name and last name. Now, here is the difference. If I haven't defined anything in a class, look at how I would have to add thousands of employees into my database, right? So for example, this is my instance. I'm trying to add a value dot first is equal to Bharat emp_1 dot last is equal to Kahuli. Similarly, emp_2 dot first is equal to Sachin. emp_2 dot last is equal to Tendulkar. Right, so this is a spelling mistake. Right, so if you look at it, first, right. So here what I've done is I have defined the values, the attributes of the employee instance, saying the first name is Virat, the last name is Kohli, employee 2's first name would be Sachin, employee. So in this way, if I have 1 lakh employees, remember I have to put 1 lakh entries in here. So do you think it's going to work out? I don't think so. Your performance is going to be greatly affected, right? So when I execute this statement, I would get my result. But as I said, writing so many lines of code is a waste, right? So if I try to do a print emp_1 dot first, and I just do it, there you can see that clearly I've got the output as Virat, right? So this is not a good way. Now you will understand how I'm going to build the classes, right? So let's see how to reduce. I'm going to make sure this all code I don't have to type it manually every time. So a class is nothing but a blueprint, right? It's just a blueprint, so that even if I have thousands of employees, with the help of the blueprint I can create 1 lakh employees pretty easily as I like, right? With less lines of code. So remember, it's just with less lines of code. So let's first initialize anytime, any class, anywhere that you have, whether it's in Java, whether it's in Python, you need to initialize the class, right? So now I no longer require this statement, right? So let's remove this off. And here I define my first initialization. So as I said, I don't require all this anymore because I'm going to deploy this in my class, right? I'm going to deploy all of this in my class, so I don't require this at all, right? So what does the term self here mean? Self is nothing but, self is the instance of a class. So whenever I do this, right, so emp underscore 1 is equal to employee. Emp underscore 1 is the instance name. So whenever I access or whenever I try to access a variable or a function within a class, emp underscore 1 would automatically come into the self argument, right? Emp underscore 1. So as I said, self is nothing but the instance name of a class, right? So here I would define the attributes, right? Self.first is equal to first, and self.last, here I'm defining the attributes, right? Self.last is equal to last. Right, and I also will define I don't want to have this print statement here any longer, so I'll also define this print statement within my class itself, right? So I'll just define that as well here itself, so it's easy for everyone to understand what I'm trying to achieve. Define display, and remember, any function that you're defining as well within a class has to have the self argument, because you're always going to call the functions or methods functions within a class with an instance, right? And whenever an instance is calling a function within a class, the first argument that is passed is the instance name, nothing but the self. As I mentioned, the instance name is the first argument which is automatically passed, right? So I have to define it this way, print self.first. Now you can look at this. Now if I need to create an employee, it's as simple as this, right? Now I just want to create employee 1. Just with one statement, I can just type in this, right? It will automatically create the first name, the last name, and as well as print it. So observe how the number of lines of code has reduced now, right? So I just type in Virat, comma, Kohli, right? And I type in fine. Okay, nothing is printed here. Let's see why. Self.first is equal to first, self.last is equal to last. Okay, so nothing has printed because, as I mentioned, now if I just want to display this, I need to call it. So I have to call a function within a class, right? So emp underscore 1 dot, I use a dot operator to access the function within a class, and I type C, automatically the function is appearing, display, and I use 2 brackets for this. And now you see how easy it is, right? I just do this, and there you get the name Virat. Pretty simple. So just try to understand, whenever this statement is executed, emp underscore 1 dot display, what exactly happens? Emp underscore 1 will go into the self argument, right? And then what exactly I'm doing here is, once it comes to the display, it will be emp underscore 1 dot first. Now emp underscore 1 dot first is nothing but the first argument that I pass, which is Virat. And that is why when you execute this statement, you will find Virat. Right? So you will find Virat, right? So pretty simple. So now you must have also, so let's see what we've completed, right? Till this point, we've completed what is a class, what are attributes and methods, what's an instance of a class, how to initialize a class, how to call methods with the instance of a class. I just showed you how to call methods with an instance of a class, but here I want to show you how to call a method with the class name itself. Now observe this carefully, right? So how to call a method with the class name itself. So what I have to do here is, I have to type in employee, this is the class name, dot display, and remember here it was automatically passing the self argument emp underscore 1. Now if I just pass it like this, it will give me an error. Just observe this. There. employee.display must be called with employee instance. Observe this error. Unbound method display must be called with employee instance because the function is expecting an instance of a class. Here in this case, I don't have to pass it explicitly because emp_1 is automatically passed, and that is why you didn't get an error in the previous section. But here I have to explicitly pass my instance name, right? And now you will see Virat being displayed, right? So just have a look. There you go. So this is how you can call a method with the class name itself by passing the instance name as an argument, right? So this is pretty much covers this, right? So I think we pretty much covered all our topics. We've covered what's a class, attributes and methods, instance of a class, constructor initializing a class, calling methods with an instance of a class, calling methods with a class, right? So in the next topics, we'll talk about multiple loops concepts which are coming up. And please subscribe to my channel. I'm just trying to help out a lot of poor students and a lot of community guys. So I request you, each and everyone who watched this video, please put in your valuable comments, and and you can also, any doubts that you have, you can always join me on Facebook. You can just type in this name in my Facebook page, Nadanla Chakravarti, and I would be available anytime. You can just ping me. You can add me in Facebook, and I'll be glad to help you at any point in time. Please reach out to me. And anyone who requires training on this, you can just reach out to me as well. You can just drop an email to me on my following email ID, and I would be glad to assist you as well. Any trainings that you require from my side, right? Thanks everyone for watching this video, and have a great day. Thank you all.